So hello again, guys. So we are back, and so we did the first reading passage, which was the Bombay stuff. Last time that was the prose fiction. We're gonna move on to the social science and see how that works. Again, we're gonna do the exact same thing. I am becoming a bigger and bigger advocate of just reading through the questions, not reading the passage. That might not be the right fit for you, but at least for the videos, I'm not going to leave this thing up here for a minute and a half reading the passage. If you want to read it beforehand, totally okay. Remember, you can always find this online, and I'll put the link down in the bottom there in the description. So today we've got this social science passage, a little different than the prose fiction, and actually a little bit shorter too. It doesn't even make it all the way down to the end of the second column. So 11, again, this is a general description. I'm going to skip it. You should have watched the first video, by the way, if you want a little bit more detail here. 12, the passage makes clear the middle ground, Telegraph Plateau, and Dolphin Rise were all names that people gave to what was actually. So this is really strong keyword stuff here. Middle ground, Telegraph Plateau. Oh, here we go. So were names that people gave to what was actually. So people assumed that this thing was an ancient blah, 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 blah. Today's sophisticated sound waves bring the hazy images of early things into sharp focus. It's actually an immense submerged mountain range. Look at how clear the discussion is here. I mean, the keywords here. So again, makes it clear was actually, which suggests that there's something that they had mistaken it for. And indeed, this assumption is incorrect. All this stuff is incorrect. Today, they know what it actually is. It's an immense submerged mountain range in the basin. 13. In the first paragraph, the author describes the stillness of the Sargasso Sea as the Kramer passes through it, primarily to emphasize the stillness. Okay, so let's see where they talk about it. I know it's in the first paragraph, and I know it has something to do with stillness. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so yeah, the sea is flat and empty. Nothing demarcates. Vast, unroughened surface. Breadth deceives. How does it deceive? But for a few lonely oceanic islands, the unperturbed surface offers no hint of the grand and sweeping energies hidden below. Okay. Grand and sweeping energies. Deception. Something like that. The stillness won't last long. No, not necessarily. They don't talk about the wind. They talk about energies below, not above. Makes it easier for a passenger on the Kramer to spot oceanic islands. So they talk about oceanic islands, but that isn't really the point, right? It's the water, the stillness is hiding what's happening below. It's in dramatic contrast to the power of what exists on and under the seafloor. Okay, I'm really liking this one. Makes it seem as if the Kramer's wake is dividing the unbroken expanse of water in two. So that's true, I think, because I mentioned that the wake divides it in two, right? Oh. Actually, not at all, huh? Okay. That's interesting. So this is a really interesting one because this seems like super plausible, right? But if you actually read the first paragraph, they make no mention of the wake of the Kramer dividing it into two. At least not in the first paragraph. Maybe it does somewhere else. So that's weird, and that's the way that they're trying to trick you on this ACT, is like, oh, well, that sounds like something's plausible, given that they were talking about extreme stillness, so, maybe it's that. It turns out, no, it's not that. It's going to be answer C here. The passage states that compared to Arizona's Grand Canyon, okay, here's some strong keywords. The canyon that lies within the mountains is considerably, and then we have a bunch of comparisons here, okay? So let's look for Grand Canyon here in the passage. Grand Canyon. Weirdest, Arizona's Grand Canyon. It's one of their most spectacular places, extends for 280 miles. Lesser known canyon, a similar depth, but greater length lies hidden in the mountains of the ridge. Okay, greater length, longer. Main purpose of the information in lines 71 through 76 is so let's see what that is. Here in this bleak and forbidding place where the water is almost freezing, subterranean fires have lifted mounds of fresh lava onto the seafloor. Scientists visiting the Rift Valley for the first time named the volcanic hills in this otherworldly setting after distant, lifeless planets. Okay, so what are we getting here? Bleak and forbidding. It's really cold. There's volcanic activity, and then it looks all alien and weird. So the main purpose of that information, describe in detail scientists' expectations for their first trip to the Rift Valley. I think expectations is wrong here, because they're talking not about expectations, but what it actually looks like, Characterize the Rift Valley as an alien, seemingly barren place. I like this. They're talking about how bleak and foreboding and kind of curious. Provide statistics. Okay, immediately I'm like, no way. There's no statistics here. It's totally qualitative description. List the names that the scientists gave to the volcanic hills. Again, no list of names. It was just kind of a qualitative description. It's got to be B. 16. One of the main purposes of the last paragraph is to state that. Okay, so let's look at the last paragraph, since again they tell me where it is. Nice enough. What seems so foreign is an integral part of the Earth's being. Okay, for the ridge of our planet gives birth. Floor in the Rift Valley is torn from the gashes that sprung the seafloor underlying all the Atlantic. Here the youngest, newest pieces are made. Earth is still cooling from a tumultuous birth 4.5 billion years ago. Heat, the leaking from the molten core and from radioactive decay deep inside the planet, rises towards the Earth's surface, powering the volcanoes that deliver the ridge to the sea. Okay, this was a question about main purposes, right? Main purposes. So if I look at this thing, it's basically describing how this big valley is, creating the entire Earth, I guess, There's a lot of this other stuff, but that's really what I think the key is. So gashes continue to increase in width. I actually don't know if that's true, but I don't think that's the main purpose. It's not. We don't really care so much about the gashes, but what they represent. Seafloor of the Atlantic is cooled. No, they talk about it being hot, volcanic. Entire Atlantic seafloor is issued from the gashes. I kind of like this. Volcanoes on Earth's dry land has created the newest, youngest pieces. Okay, this is one that fooled me. I didn't end up picking this one, but this one, it looked plausible to me the first time I read it. Because it's got volcanoes, it's creating the newest, youngest pieces of Atlantic seafloor, absolutely. The thing that they throw in here, the disqualified, is this Earth's dry land. So one of the themes that when you're choosing your multiple choice answer here, in the reading section in particular, is that every single piece of this answer has to be correct in order for the answer to be correct. Here, Earth's dry land, incorrect, so we got to go with H. 17. The author most strongly implies that people commonly assume the deepest waters of an ocean are. Okay, strongly implies that people commonly assume. So here, I don't think I'm going to try to look at this yet, because I'm not exactly sure where they talk about how deep the ocean is, but those are some strong keywords, so we're going to refer back to that. As used in line 19, the phrase paid out most nearly means. Okay, 19. Paid out. Yep. Early efforts to plumb Atlantic depths proved outrageously inaccurate. One naval officer paid out 8 miles, 13 kilometers of hemp rope from a drifting ship and concluded the sea had no bottom. So paid out is something that you have to be able to do to hemp rope, basically. It's an action verb, right? Dispensed makes sense, right? That's like taking the rope and kind of plopping it out. Sorry, I think I slammed my mic there. Ascertained, I mean, he knows that the rope is there. Obviously, he's doing something with it. Suggested, no. Compensated, no. So it's got to be dispensed here. According to the passage, the mountain range in Atlantic Basin covers nearly the same amount of Earth's surface as does. Okay, so I want to see some, this is probably in the Grand Canyon where they're comparing how huge this thing is, but I want to look for Earth's surface here. Remember the Grand Canyon stuff was here? Oh, maybe not. Okay, but here's some of this stuff, Mount St. Helens. Mountains are stark. Oh. Well, maybe I'm still going to look for Earth's surface, but it's not exactly where I thought it was going to be. Okay, Earth's surface, there it is. So even if Earth's surface is a little bit hard to find here, Mount St. Helens, Himalayas, Pacific Ocean, again, anything with a big capital letter is easy enough to find. Himalayas, Rockies, blah, blah, blah. So it covers almost as much of the Earth's surface as the dry land of the continents. So there it is. Right there, right in front of you, right? The exact same phrase. According to the passage, the white cover on the peaks of the mountains in Atlantic's basin. So white cover here. White cover and mountains are kind of our keywords. I think I actually remember reading white cover when I was trying to search for this last one. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Thin and patchy covering of white. The skeletal remains of tiny microscopic animals that once lived at the surface. Yeah. So there we go. Again, you match the keywords to the passage, and that tells you where it's going to be. So skeletal remains of microscopic animals. So are we done? I don't think so. I think we ended up skipping at least one thing, right? So we skipped this guy, and then we ended up skipping also number 1. So I think we can answer number 1 at this point. The author's attitude towards the main subject of the passage can best be described as, now that we've read enough of it, we know the main subject of the passage is that there's this crazy volcanic thing that creates all the Earth, basically, and it's all underground, and there's big valleys, and it's absolutely crazy. So I don't think disbelief makes sense here. Obviously she doesn't disbelieve this. She's talking about what it is. Amusement, nostalgia, again, not really amused. It's just she's freaking out, right? This thing is huge. It's bigger than the Grand Canyon. It covers all of the Earth's continents, So, I'm already pointing to awe, obviously, so not boredom. It's got to be this. And then 17, the author most strongly implies that people commonly assume the deepest waters of an ocean. Okay, here we make a judgment call. This one I know I'm going to have to search for a little bit in the text. So if you were doing this on test day, I might actually go ahead and leave this one as one that you can't easily find and just say, you know what, forget it, I'm going to go to the next one. But today, since we're going to do this passage by passage, just go and look for this. So commonly assume. I'm looking for deepest waters, commonly assume, the strongly implies is not going to be found in the text because it's something the author's doing. But commonly assume deepest waters. So let's see if we can find deepest waters or assumption. Contrary to one of my guess, Atlantic's deepest waters, here we go, like those in other oceans, are along her edges. Okay, contrary to one might guess. So, okay, this is where we have to read the question really carefully, right? Because the author's saying that the Atlantic's deepest waters, like those in other oceans, are along her edges, but that's contrary to what one might guess. So what people commonly assume, then, is it's not at the edges of the ocean, but rather, presumably, in the middle of the ocean, right? Definitely not dotted with islands, definitely not located in trenches. About 1,000 miles offshore. How would you distinguish between about 1,000 miles offshore and at the middle of the ocean? I think that you can think about it like this. What people would commonly assume is definitely not that it's exactly 1,000 miles offshore that you find the deepest part of the ocean, right? Like, that's a weirdly specific thing for people to commonly assume. It's true that this is at least not on the edge, but at the same time, that's like saying, how far away do people commonly assume the moon is? And it's like, oh, well, exactly 5,892 miles, That's just something that people aren't going to commonly assume. So I'm comfortable with answer B, and I think if we were to scoot down to the answer key, which, by the way, is at the bottom of this guy, so that was question 17 on this one. Normally I don't check answers live because, I'm a little bit unsure, but since there's a little bit of ambiguity. Yeah, this is answer B. Answer B was the bottom of the ocean. Let's see if we can find it. Yeah, at the middle of the ocean. Yeah. So, okay, hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea. So notice that, again, this is a social science one, but you don't have to know any social science. This is true of all the reading passages. You use the same strategies. Doesn't matter what they're actually about. It's just finding keywords, matching the thing in the text to the answer that best matches the thing in the text. It's all just like an association game. So don't let anyone trick you into thinking that you have to deeply understand this text and like read through it and really grasp like, oh, the underlying nuance, because it's just not the case. So hopefully this was useful for y'all. I'll be back again with more of these reading passages. I'm going to end up finishing this entire 2015 to 2016 test. Again, I'm only doing the Savvy series for reading, but check out the Savvy Smart for math, because I think that's really where a lot of people struggle. Once you get the basic loop for this and the basic loop for science, which, by the way, are more or less the same thing, I'll talk on the science section about how the science section is a reading section. We'll get some good information, so hopefully this has been helpful for you, and good luck. Chase that 36, baby.